All right, welcome everybody. It is 4 p.m. on the East Coast of America here. It is Wednesday, September 6th, 2023. This is episode 44 of the Web3x3 podcast. This week, we'll be exploring stock trading on the blockchain. The London Stock Exchange is planning to launch a digital asset arm. We'll be discussing if that's going to help or hurt, or how it actually impacts the development of blockchain in the Web3 space. This show is your weekly insight into the digital world, how blockchain can be applied inside your business for marketing. And I am joined, as always, by my lovely co-host, Michelle Peterson-Clark.
Hi, everyone. I thought for a minute there you were going to say the East Coast of Australia.
I guess they do call it the States here, not exactly America, but that's kind of American-centric, that term. And so also your ops guy, Mike Neubauer.
How's it going? Good evening, good morning, wherever you are.
Mike's
or
been
9 p.m. for those of us here in the UK.
Yeah, right. So we've got, for those who care, we've got represented New Jersey, Florida, and London. So it's a all-star cast. Mike, you want to share a bit about what you've been doing lately, why you didn't sleep last night?
No, we'll get into that. I mean, let's just jump into the stories. There's
right.
more pressing things to discuss, but
we'll
talk about it later.
We'll go right to story number one then. There was an article out of Fortune. London Stock Exchange plans digital asset unit. So according to the Financial Times, the London Stock Exchange is planning to launch a new trading market that will let users swap tokenized versions of stock. So London would become then the first stock exchange to trade conventional financial assets through blockchain technology. The LSE said they studied this concept and that a trading venue like this is welcomed, and they've concluded blockchain has reached a, quote, inflection point. So I've got thoughts on this, having worked in Wall Street and the stock market. Actually worked for a stock market, my last job on Wall Street. But I guess we'll start with Mike Neubauer. Let's get some thoughts out of you, Mike.
Well, I was actually curious to see what you had to say about this first, being the
all right, I'll lead us off.
But go for
you
it.
Want to give you something? I'll give you some hooks on this one. I really feel that until the traditional financial system embraces blockchain, it will never really take off because the big money is waiting on that. The regulatory problem we've discussed in the past, that's going to continue. But the fact is, it is not the United States that's leading the way with this. And that's what caught my eye. And I know that you can make the argument about Western democracies and, of course, a close ally of America. But England, if they start trading tokenized versions of stock, will attract that stock business because people want it. And I say people, I mean institutions.
I'm confused on how this is essentially going to operate. So as a potential investor or as a firm, I would have to convert fiat into this token and then I can buy stock with that token.
They haven't given clarity as to exactly how they're going to do it. And this is my biggest question is what blockchain will this be on? It matters. Obviously, in the financial world, the Bitcoin blockchain is not under the control, if you will, of the institutionalized powers. Let's put it that way. Even if it does work fine since 2009, they don't want to use it unless they can, quote unquote, issue things on it. And so I feel like I can't answer your question. I don't know what the technical aspect will be, but I can tell you this. Stock units themselves are derivatives. They represent ownership of the company. So whether we do this in a tokenized version on blockchain through NFTs or whatever you want to call it, trading cards, anything you want, if I can own electronically a piece of the company in a digitized form, it's no different effectively from the stock.
Correct, especially nowadays, right? I mean, because all stock is issued digitally now, right? So that's why I asked the question, like, are you adding this unnecessary intermediary or are you replacing the stock with this tokenized blockchain certificate? Let's just call it that.
I don't think they're replacing it. I think that it's going to be an addition to. So you can trade the equities the way you always would, and you can also trade the tokens on this LSE digital arm, theoretically.
So the tokens are tradable as well as utilized as whatever currency to purchase these stocks.
Right.
Okay, so
go ahead.
This begs the age-old question, right? Is it a security or is it a currency? In this case, it's basically paving the way to be both again.
Hold on a sec. I don't think there's any question that it's a security if it represents ownership of a company.
But you can trade it, right? Like you can trade it and then you can buy it. So I use the analogy all the time. If I wanted to buy Apple stock and I only have Microsoft stock, I cannot buy Apple stock with my Microsoft stock, right? So therefore, it's not a medium of exchange. I have to go through a separate intermediary in order to finalize that transaction. So if that's the same scenario, we're dealing with the exact same commodity or derivative, whatever you want to call it, that could be used as a currency to purchase other assets, or it could be an investable stock, so to speak, that's tradable.
So
That's
you're talking about
definitely one of the differences, isn't it? Big
fungibility
difference.
is the term they use in finance for that, Mike, when you can flip one to the other, as you know. And so I don't know if you could effectively say like Disney stock represents, it's an asset, right? If I want to go buy a house and I own 1 million shares of Disney, they'll give me a loan on that.
Correct.
So
And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, right? There's the ability to borrow against crypto as well. It's a little bit more of a risk, obviously, depending on which type and which chain and which mechanism. But again, I'm trying to understand the logistics of how this works. Again, like in my head, if this is used as a medium of exchange, what's the purpose of it? If it's used as a means to trade on the stock exchange itself, well, that kind of removes the whole blockchain component of it. So I'm trying to understand what's the purpose here other than just flaring up the key buzz terms to gain recognition.
So I think the goal is to who attracts the trading. There's money to be made in clearing and settling. And I know that clearing and settling in a blockchain world is instantaneous, but traditionally you wanted the trading so you could have the back end versions of the business attached to it. That's how Wall Street works. In a blockchain version of this, it doesn't seem that that's the profitability angle. I think they just want to be able to compete with the liquidity that's happening in America, trading on the New York Stock Exchange, for example. If I can trade this thing faster and with less regulatory hurdles in London, then as an institution, I'm going to put my money into the London system, if you will. So
well, you wouldn't. You'd be putting it into the token, which therefore is tradable on all of these various systems.
But would be managed by the London Stock Exchange, not the New York Stock Exchange.
Aha, you see, there's the difference, right? Because it is blockchain, there is none of that regulatory initiatives. If there's specific tokens on a specific blockchain that the London Stock Exchange owns, then this is literally the first step in them migrating every asset that they trade on their exchange onto the blockchain.
I would argue that's exactly what we're seeing.
Then that is a huge step forward in the technology advancement.
Well, if you think it works in London smoothly enough anyway, don't you think it would be copied by every other country?
I would think so, but there's the immutability component of it that I feel, and the transparency component of it that would scare some people off. Again, we're talking about a non-central situation where the control mechanisms, the arms and the levers that need to get pulled behind the curtain are not usually the powers that be now. And I'm not sure that, they would just open this up to the masses to have nodes be able to execute these transactions in this digital ledger we call the blockchain.
I think it is going to be centralized. I think that's the purpose of, I know, and that flies in the face of the spirit of Web3.
Well, it also puts a smoke screen. And Michelle, I want to get your take on this because, I really don't see a clear path forward here. I see a smoke screen using the technology as a way to say, hey, this is what we're doing. It's great. But at the end of the day, they're just basically polishing up what they're already doing now.
Agreed. But I think that was always the goal, right? I don't want to get conspiracy here, but the DeFi world represents an existential threat to the traditional finance. So the way around that, if you're TradFi, is to go build a blockchain and move stuff onto your blockchain.
When we talk about Turkey later, I think we'll circle it back. No, but I want to get Michelle's take on this from just, obviously you're there. You have a lot of experience with working
Michelle, you
on
run
that
the London Stock Exchange. Tell us what's going on.
Oh yeah, there all the time.
I mean, I'm sure you have better insights than us over here. We have it from a very different perspective.
I mean, one of the things I think is, if we think about it, we've seen, haven't we, that there's been countries as players who are moving either whether it be regulation or laws or inviting, funds to invite firms to come and set up crypto or Web3 businesses in their country. So I kind of see this as a little bit like, because the UK government have been talking about trying to be one of these powerhouses, this is the London Stock Exchange going, hey, we want a piece of that. Let's start to think about how it is that we can, move into the space, but still be in a familiar environment to us. So it's not like they've come out and they've gone, well, we're creating our own token and we're doing X, Y, Z. They're not doing that. What they're doing is they're saying, we run a business that has all of these companies listed, even though the London Stock Exchange at the moment is, we were having a discussion about it just before dinner, we're that kind of family, they're struggling a bit with, getting, big companies to list on them, probably a bit of a result of Brexit and the downturn in the economies around the world and stuff like that. So they're also looking at, as you said, Mark, they make money from transaction fees and, brokerage and all of those sorts of things. So this is them saying, well, instead of, doing, X, Y, Z, this year we're going to do a digital crypto, look at moving into Web3 stuff. And obviously, as we've talked about, haven't we, Mike, that, how Amazon haven't come out with their own blockchain yet, I don't know, because that was one of our predictors, wasn't it? And that hasn't happened. But, I would imagine that either they go all in, maybe they buy one of the existing blockchains, or they go all in with a particular one, or they'll create their own. And, the technology exists and there's plenty of smart people around here for them to certainly do that for not much money. I guess for me, as someone who, has owned shares, we own shares in our super fund and personally and all of that, it's run through a broker or an exchange that we're using when we do our trading and stuff. And the level of security is pretty reasonable. So I would imagine that security would have to increase or be pretty well locked down and very tight on something like this, because you can't have, the other day I saw some exchange was robbed of $47 million worth of crypto, like just this week. So you could not have the London Stock Exchange losing, shares in, whatever, $500 million worth of shares in XYZ company today was lost on their blockchain. Like, that just cannot happen. So that stuff would have to be, there would have to be so many checks and balances. It can't just be sign up with your wallet on your website to do that, because I don't think that's secure enough.
To that point, for those to bring a little value to the crew out there in the Twitter/X world, they are all talking about three main things on Twitter about this. Can I call it Twitter? Number one, data security. Right. You raised a very good point there, Michelle. That is the big concern. Does this help or hurt? The general consensus out there on X is that this actually helps security. Now, we'll wait and see to the first problem crops up. Number two, to Mike's point, who are the node operators? If there's a blockchain, who's running it? So is this just another overlay of complexity like Mike is asserting, or is this actually going to make the process better? It's not clear from the article. And number three,
so go ahead. No. I want to expand on that number 2 point, but go.
The crypto bots have gone ballistic with this thing because they're all like, hey, you want to learn how to trade and invest?
Yeah.
So it's hard to get through. That's really hard to get to the real sentiment.
Surprise.
That's a combination of all three of your points, right? Because NFTs and some of these blockchain nodes and bots, they're designed to do automatic transactions, right? They're designed and programmed to execute at certain levels, just like, any automatic ticker that you put in, or any kind of future that you put in at a price at a quantity. But the thing that concerns me here is they are not going to sacrifice their quote unquote fees, because that's how they make money. Right? On every transaction, buy and sell, they get paid. So how are they going to justify whatever the price of gas is at the time in order to execute the transaction on chain? Right? So that's an unpredictable variable that either they're going to have to tack their fee on, which means that cost gets passed on to the investor or the entity on which is selling the asset. Either way, somebody's losing here, right? And that money is going to the executioners who are doing the transaction, the actual, the printers of that particular block.
So I'm going to little stock market history here, or personal history. In the stock market, the first hour of trading and the last hour of trading are frenetic and very difficult, both for humans and machines. And oftentimes orders don't get completed properly. When errors happen, that's when they happen. In the middle of the trading day, it's very orderly. And so it's much easier to trade both as a human and as an algorithm AI. So my guess to your question, Mike, I don't know, I'm guessing, the gas fees will be appropriately adjusted based off of the difficulty of the liquidity at the time, meaning you're going to pay more in the beginning and end of the day.
Which again would off balance that. I mean, there's a reason why those are high peak hours, right? I mean, first of all, it's different time zones on where these things can be traded. But the beginning of the day, you have some futures, you have announcements that were made the night before that people want to get in on. The end of the day, there's announcements after the bell rings. Like, there's a lot of these variables that get thrown into the mix. And again, I asked the crazy question, why even go into that step when you can just stick with the whole crypto side, right?
Because
there's 24
hours. The
hours.
stock trading business from America.
I understand that, but is it really that good right now to even consider that? Are they in a position to want to buy low and sell high with this? I think that there's a lot of technical questions that really need to get answered before this becomes a viable option that, to Michelle's point, is secure. You're not going to rely on some 70, 80-year-old person walking in with their life savings to some random, financial advisor and them saying, yeah, we're going to put your stuff on blockchain and you're going to be able to access it with this crypto card. And here's your seed phrase. So, this is just not a possibility. So, how do they bypass all that?
Have you seen the South Park banking skit, and it's gone?
Yes. And it's gone. That's exactly how it will play out.
Right. So I don't know. This also begs the regulatory side of it. It forces the hand of the regulators, in my opinion, because they need to get the rules right. Otherwise, the crypto business goes to where it's wanted.
The crypto trading for stocks business goes to where it's wanted. But again, the crypto market has shown to be sustainable without Wall Street or the London Stock Exchange. So we'll see.
I think that they're going to... I feel like there'll be something like there'll be a per transaction fee, like $1 or whatever, £1, £2, I don't know, 50p. But I think that it'll be a little bit like Stripe or, PayPal or some of the merchant banks have, where they have like 20 cents and then they have the 3.5% or whatever it is. So I would expect that they would have some kind of a fee like that, because they would not want to do their budgets or their financial reporting based on whether or not people are trading when the gas price is high or low. They would want some part of the money to be a measurable, predictable amount.
So I asked the question again, though, as the investor, what's in it for me to go this route rather than just buying the damn stock alone?
But my feeling on this will be eventually this will be how it's done. There won't be the ability to do it the old way in, say,
well, there's additional fees that go into it. So if I have a $20 bill and I want to buy whatever stock of some random company, I can't do that. It's going to cost me however much minus the gas fees, whatever they are at the given time of the execution of the trade. And how can they, like, think about how they can manipulate the gas fees and the gas wars at that by holding on to the sell, right?
So it comes down to who controls the monetary thing, right?
But this is the whole point of Web3. We control it, right? We don't put it in the hands of somebody that, used to be waving a paper on a floor in some big building somewhere, right? Like, this, no offense, Mark, because I could see you doing that. But this puts the power of all of those executionary transactions in our hands, and we determine when that happens. And, it could be from anywhere in the world to anyone in the world. And I think that they're just trying to replicate that and bring it back down to the level where it used to be.
I think that's exactly what's happening. And it's not to be conspiratorial here, but this is the traditional pattern of how people call out for government help, is when there's money lost, right?
Yeah.
So There'll be a scam. There'll be some sort of a mortgage collapse. There'll be something where people demand action. And guess what? If the London Stock Exchange tries this, there's a debacle, God forbid. Somebody loses, some institution, an established, Lloyd's of London loses $200 million. You're going to see all of a sudden the crypto blockchaining of Wall Street finance will happen immediately. So I don't know that, and that's me just pontificating. But I do think that they are trying to get control of the situation, if you will. Yes, you can trade it without a middleman, but that's not the goal here. I mean, it's our goal, but when the London Stock Exchange announces that they're going to be there, it's not their goal.
Now, Spanners asked a couple of things in the bulk chat. So he said, is this an attempt to introduce traditional traders and investors to Web3? Maybe. And then secondly to that, he said, indoctrinate them to become advocates of crypto and blockchain rather than adversaries.
I think partially yes to the first. Traditional traders being introduced to the concept. Yeah, they're already familiar with it. They live in the world of finance. They know all about the DeFi money that they're not getting. But that second point is it right there. This is about who's getting paid on these transactions. In the gas fee world of DeFi, no one's really getting paid. The node operators make a little bit, but no one's getting paid in the traditional sense of big finance salaries and bonuses. And that's the problem, quote unquote. I think what we're seeing is the attempt to make that system look a lot like this system. Mike, that's why it rubs you the wrong way. I agree with you.
It doesn't, because I feel like the path has been set for quite a while. I mean, all of these, I can do it myself investing platforms, TD, Ameritrade, all these things. Like, did that help the financial industry or did it hurt it? I mean, there's two ways to look at it, right? I guarantee you that it hurt the financial advisor industry, but more and more people felt that they didn't have to rely on some dude in a suit and a Beamer to invest their life savings. They can play around with money that they have available.
Easy on the dude in the suit.
Well, I mean, you threw the backwards cap on, man. I thought we were cool now.
Part here.
Is that your trading floor attire?
It's it's Colorado baseball cap, because I didn't want to get too formal on this conversation. So for those who don't know, I worked on Wall Street on the trading floors in New York City for 30 years. Big firms like Morgan Stanley. So I know this world well. But I will tell you this. I do think that this is an attempt to make DeFi look like TradFi. And I know that doesn't, and it's about who gets the money. Yes, I agree with you that Satoshi Nakamoto did this in the first place to establish the fact that you didn't need this. He's proven his point, whoever he was. But still, you have powerful moneyed interests like the London Stock Exchange who are not getting a piece of what they used to and are not just going to roll over. So how does this play out? Anyone's guess. But this isn't about finance trying to introduce blockchain and help, broaden Web3 for the average trader.
Okay. So if that's the approach that you're going to take with it, what about all those companies back in the NFT craze when everything was going nuts that jumped into NFTs because it was the thing to do, that fell flat on their face with it? Okay. So is the London Stock Exchange going to fall flat on their face with this? Is this a massive risk that they're taking?
Here's the difference. There's no regulatory risk when you have the law of the land behind you.
There's still the consumer risk. If nobody's investing into this because they're like, what the hell? Why would we do that when this is the exact reason the technology was developed to get away from these traditional methods? So if the consumer and like the investor speaks that they don't want this, they fall flat on their face, just like a Porsche NFT.
Right. But if you are a large British money manager and you're HSBC and you've got trillions of pounds that you need to invest, and you have an opportunity to do it this way or not at all, they're going to go with this way. This isn't about, no one's looking out for the interests of the Web3 community and the spirit of what, DeFi was supposed to have been. It's, they want to put their money to work in a returnable asset that's going to make them grow. And crypto has proven it can do that. The problem
not at that level.
Well, because there's no legal way to invest in crypto at large scale right now.
That's a massive risk, right? So, I mean, again, the U.S. has taken measures into that where you can invest into futures of it, right? Which, again, I think is more scammy than this discussion.
But that's not, trading of futures is less risky, if you will, from that perspective than trading of the actual underlying instrument. And here's what I mean. The companies themselves can leave the London Stock Exchange if they feel their stock is being manipulated because of the system. So there's a risk there to like it's a sovereign risk to the UK. And I think at that point, when the London Stock Exchange is making moves like this, it's going to be with the approval of the government, tacit or explicit.
Oh, I think the government involvement is a surefire thing on it. And if this is their way to backdoor regulations within crypto, there's going to be backdoor regulations around those regulations, right? Because again, the entire system is not dependent on the London Stock Exchange.
Yeah.
Right. So for those who are joining us late, Caleb, welcome. We're discussing that the London Stock Exchange is considering issuing tokenized stock trading on the blockchain for companies, for publicly traded companies in London. They announced the digital asset arm will they said next year sometime, but they were very vague about when. And they've been very unclear as to what blockchain or exactly what the mechanics will look like. But conceptually, it is a watershed moment because this would be the first time a major financial institution is enhancing the trading, if you will, in the Web3 world.
So just talking it out loud with you guys, I mean, I would just beg like that. I would assume and flag it because we'll come back to this episode. I know it, but I'm willing to bet that they just issue a stable coin and that whatever trades are going to be traded on that stable coin, and they control the stable coin. The stable coin is in conjunction with whatever the pound is at that moment. I mean, again, that's when it becomes an intermediary, which is useless. There's fees being thrown around everywhere for no reason.
Except that by adding that intermediary, which I don't agree with, would open up the floodgates for investor assets. And that is of great interest to both the London Stock Exchange and the UK government.
Are they sure about that?
Well, you've got asset managers worldwide that want to invest in crypto and can't. I mean, they can, but they are afraid that they're going to be in legal jeopardy.
Yeah.
So they won't.
So that's why the US particularly needs to get regulation in order, don't they?
So the US is going to have to do something. This forces their hand because if London goes forward with this, and I believe they will, then the New York, et cetera, has no choice if they want to remain competitive. And they can't without the legal framework.
Yes.
So you're talking about the loss of financial leadership. And by the way, for those who don't know this, London, New York, there's a couple of cities, Tokyo, that have always been vying for the leadership financially of the world. Yeah. And this would stilt it in the favor of the UK if so.
Well, anyway, it'll be interesting to see.
We'll see. All right, takes us to story
number. Let's hang on. Just go one thing. Insol has said he thinks it's them looking for ways to be relevant, get a slice of the pie, which other jurisdictions, might be regulated into oblivion. So
I agree with him. Yeah. It's a great point. I mean, it's a competitive landscape in finance, and who controls the trading controls the other parts of the business. So there's basically trading, which has things like clearing and settlement attached to it, and there's big money in that. And then there's wealth management, which is where do I put my money? And London can attract both if they do this right.
Yeah. He also wants to know if you've got a trading floor jacket as well.
So I worked in what they called upstairs trading on the trading floors for the brokers, not on the floor of the exchanges. Although I did work at the Investors Exchange, which was a AI-driven stock exchange. No, I do not have a colorful, but I do have a lot of stories. I'll tell you this. So one of the things people don't know about the New York Stock Exchange is there have been every winter, all these guys down there have shoveled their driveways to get into New York City, and there's inevitably someone has a heart attack. This has happened regularly. You can go back and Google it. And when people have heart attacks on those snowy days and die on the floor, they get dragged into the kitchen so it's not a crime scene because they can't stop the trading. So that's one of those little known secrets of New York finance.
That is appalling. Yeah, that is so bad.
Welcome to American business. I'm going to take.
I'm laughing, but I'm laughing because I'm shocked, not because.
What about everybody who needs lunch?
America. Only in America.
To story 3, because Mike, I think this is more relevant. If that's cool, can we pull your story into this, Mike?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so Mike donated a good one here about Turkey, the country of. More than half of Turkey has turned to crypto amid currency devaluation. So there was apparently a survey recently done by KuCoin, and the survey was conducted in May, found that 52% of adults in Turkey have invested in crypto. More than half their population is trying to protect their savings from inflation and currency devaluation. So basically, that was less than 0.5% in November of 2021. Now it's more than half of their population. So basically, as the lira is being inflated and they're suffering over there from inflation, as most of the world is right now, It is driving investment into crypto, which is fascinating. So, Mike, this was your story. I'll let you get some thoughts first, and I've definitely got some.
Well, again, this is the market dictating the path of where finance is going to go, right? So what is the next logical step? If I have a whole bunch of rocks and all of a sudden my neighbors start trading rocks for goods and services with other neighbors, that now becomes the primary currency of exchange. Now, all of a sudden, local businesses are forced to accept that medium of exchange for also their goods and services, and therefore currency is now replaced. So you can try to regulate it as much as you want, but this is a perfect example, in my opinion, of how a consumer and capitalistic enterprise can literally gain control of an entire economy and ultimately, convert more than half of the people into that. Now, if these are cold storage assets because they're scared that their primary source of income and currency is just losing its monetary value, then that might be a different discussion as far as them using it as savings versus an actual day-to-day transaction. But I feel like that's what's around the corner for them.
I think that's a fascinating story. I also think that the market does what the market does. This is called capital flight. When your money is going down in value, you put it where it's not going to. And this is going to be the case for all these countries, America included. The United States hasn't hit that phase yet, but I really feel eventually they will. This is what the London Stock Exchange's move is, an effort to get a leg up on things like this. Michelle, what do you think?
Well, there was a couple of interesting things in that article, wasn't there? I mean, one of the things about, if you do think about all adults aged 18 to 60, 52% of them have invested in cryptocurrencies. Like, that is huge. Like, that is a large market share. And then 47% of the female crypto investors are young women aged 18 to 30. So, there's a lot of things around that. And I don't think we've talked about, have we, the Barbie movie before? But, I can imagine that the types of things that were being portrayed and the underlying currents being said overtly and not so overtly in the movie are about women actually not relying on getting married or, having partners to support them and all that going forward. And young women investing in crypto, I think, is a way of them saying, hey, I'm going to be responsible for my financial future. I don't need, another woman or another man or whatever to help me do that. And, I think that is, I think that's really exciting for me that they are looking at that. And I don't know, I need to go to Turkey now and see if I can hear talk about Bitcoin on the street. It's not that far from here. I could go pretty easily.
I'll tell you, the concept of taking control of your financial situation is really the spirit of Web3. If you think about it, like the whole DeFi movement and Barbie, I did not see the movie, but I will say this though. I think that I'm okay with people in control of their own destinies, especially when it comes to your money.
Yeah.
Coming from Wall Street, that's a big one.
One thing I wanted to add real fast, Mike, that your stat got me. The one here that of all the people investing in crypto in Turkey, which is a lot, more than half, the most popular investment is Bitcoin, 71% of all crypto investing. So I think that proves that Bitcoin is the dominant player. And of course, Ethereum closely behind, 45%. My point is that the system is working. It's exactly what they envisioned back when.
And again, technology and different advancements have something to do with that. Spanner asked a good question. Is it working? Is it protecting their money? Again, like if it's designed to shield it and put it in their quote unquote safety deposit box in this format, then maybe, because now you're talking about a global economy on something that's not regulated by the governments that are, to be blunt, fucking everything up. Right. Yeah. So, this is an opportunity to kind of get their assets out of those. But again, it's only a matter of time before those assets need to be liquidated. Right. People need to pay for their rent. They need to pay for their mortgage. They need to buy groceries. And why are they going to go through the headache of removing and exchanging that existing asset when all those businesses need to do is just accept it as that form of exchange?
Payment. Yeah.
And I think that really is the next logical step with it. So, I made the argument, many, many, many months ago now that, when this crypto phase died out, a huge component of why is because of the global economy, right? People needed to liquidate themselves and they needed to buy bread and eggs and pay for their mortgage and car payments and gas and all this other stuff. So they had to take whatever, I guess, assets that were easy to liquefy, put them back into fiat currency in order just to live. But if this is a new medium to live, why bother with the fiat side?
These are companies that right now accept Bitcoin as payment. Microsoft, PayPal, Shopify, AT&T, Dell, AMC Theater, Twitch. These are accepting crypto payments directly, not through any intermediaries at the moment. So we're starting to see the slow seepage of, yes, crypto is becoming an acceptable form of currency. And
so is this a reliable, are the necessary guardrails in place for people in mass to come in and say, hey, I think that this is more reliable than what my government is giving out to us as far as this currency goes? And if so, are they willing to invest their savings, their equities? And, ultimately that's going to lead to banks issuing loans on those digital assets. Like, this is recreating the entire economy from the ground up.
I think, and that was the whole idea behind it. If you think about it, there's going to be a movement, and it won't be in the Western democracies first. It's going to be in the countries that are being penalized, if you will, by the financial system as a whole. And the movement against Russia, I'll give you an example. After the invasion of Ukraine, there was a big move into crypto because the Russian banks had been cut off from the Western democratic financial system, and so because of sanctions. My point is, the people inside these countries, they have to do something, right? They've got their savings at risk, and you cannot print crypto. Well, I should say you can, but you can't print Bitcoin.
Correct.
I don't know.
I don't want to belabor this, but it's such an important topic, right? So segue it back to the first article. Does the London Stock Exchange get in the way of that progress? Or do they try to merge into that busy highway that is getting busier by the minute? And if so, do they get pushed off onto the shoulder?
They want a piece of the action, as they say in the mafia.
I want to facilitate it.
Yeah. But by facilitating...
I think that ship has gone bye-bye. Like, I think people realize that they don't need them to facilitate it. Again,
they're not going to go down. They're going to go down kicking and screaming, though. They're not going to give up that easily.
Okay,
so a quick story, Mike.
One quick question first. So, do they want the power and the control, or do they want the hand in the cookie jar? And don't say both.
They want their hand in the cookie jar.
Okay, so then the power and the control is irrelevant.
Yeah, but who controls the money? So this is like a Rango.
Again, if they can come to terms with the fact that we control the money in this type of system, the country of Turkey just proved that. The citizens and the people are the ones that are in control of the economy right now.
Here's the problem. In the United States, in New Jersey, where I live, if you want to get gas in your car, you go to a gas station and you have to pay the person to pump your gas. Versus every other state in America, you can go and pump your own gas. But in New Jersey, there's a law that says they're trying to preserve low-wage jobs. You cannot pump your own gas. So, right. The reason I bring
you pay extra for that?
Yes, you do.
Wow.
Well, there's a gas station on every square foot in Jersey too.
The reason I bring this up and why it matters in Turkey and crypto is because if the law says, then you have to do it that way, or you go to jail. Now, I agree with you, Mike. Philosophically, you know that we're aligned, and there is no need for a banking overlay or a trading overlay or any overlay. Blockchain does it all for you. It's rule of law by technology, as they say. The problem is that when you say the ship has sailed, it hasn't sailed yet. It's still in dock figuring out what the legal system looks like.
No, the legal system is way behind. It's in the wake of the ship moving forward, right? Which is typically the case when it comes to legal things, right? I mean, again, it takes those FTX stories and all those things for people to actually hold hearings and hold press conferences and actually get the ball in motion when it comes to regulatory. But the ship is way down the road on that. We see that with social media now. Everything, the monsters that they became are way in front of any regulatory efforts that have been put forth.
I agree with you, but it also hampers the business world, because if anyone on 5 minutes on YouTube will find AI versions of American presidents playing Dungeons and Dragons with each other. But the advertising companies in the content marketing world cannot do that because they're afraid of being sued because the legal framework isn't there yet. So I'm just saying that it does impact the business world, even though technologically you're right. Like technically, you're correct.
I think business-wise, I'm correct too, because again, they are going to. Okay, so let's put it a different way. Is it better to ask for permission or ask for forgiveness?
Are we talking me personally?
Always.
In business, just in business. You take the risks and you ask for forgiveness, right? So I think that especially in a situation like Turkey, where you have an entire population that is migrating towards this endeavor, you as the local deli in Turkey, are you going to try to sit there and wait for legal regulation to be passed before you can accept crypto in exchange for sandwiches? No. You're going to do it because that's what the population demands. And guess what? So when the population has the stranglehold of where that moves and the businesses can profit from it, the businesses are going to evolve to keep their lights on before they take any risk from regulatory on high.
I would agree with that.
We've talked plenty of times about businesses that made $500 million knowing that they were going to get fined, and the fine was only $100 million. So they've said to themselves, we've made $400 million, therefore it's worth the risk of asking for forgiveness later.
There is a term for that. It's called pharmaceuticals.
No, there's a real term for that. It's called making a business decision. That is a slang business term for, is the fine worth it? Oftentimes it is.
Yes. Because the fine is never more than what they made, ever.
Because who determines the fine? People who don't know what the hell they're doing.
Well, so this is another Wall Street story for you. I'm going to get fired for this one, but fortunately I'm not there anymore. There were banking meetings inside these investment banks where the banks would determine whether or not they could take in a new piece of business based on where maybe geographically it was in the world. If it was risk to the brand, there was a meeting. The salesperson would pitch for the business to come aboard. And the panel that would listen to this were the lawyers for the bank, would decide, what do we think the fine would be if we got in trouble, if this was caused an issue? And then they, $400 million worth of business for a $50 million fine, like Michelle's point. Yep, bring it aboard. I don't condone this at all, but that goes on in the business world.
I'm sure.
Well, it's risk assessment. It's not just with fines. It's also with loss of inventory, right? Like you do those types of analysis all the time. And as long as you keep your head above water, you're probably going to pull the trigger on it because, again, especially in business, and this goes with everything, nobody ever went broke taking a profit, right? The minute you start burning cash and losing money, then you're screwed.
Until you're trafficking guns and children. But yeah, okay, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Legally. We're talking legally.
No, I agree. And I think that this is an interesting conundrum of the populace has clearly spoken, right? People like crypto. They specifically like Bitcoin. The government has not done anything, and the ship is moving without them. I agree with you on that 100%, Mike. I don't know how it goes. I do know that everybody wants a piece of their hand in the cookie jar. This isn't about the freedom of Web3, and it's just about who's getting paid.
Well, that's what all these SEC stories are about, right? It's just give me my money now because I don't know what I'm doing yet.
Right. All right, I'm going to move us to story 3, if that's cool with you guys. This one is a return to a theme we've done before, but I kind of think this is a more interesting version of it. Basically, there's a Decrypt article. Lufthansa, the airline, has launched an NFT loyalty program on Polygon. So actually, they're about to launch it. Airline giant Lufthansa is starting a loyalty program on the blockchain. This will be offering perks for passengers who collect specific NFTs. This Lufthansa is a group of airlines. For those who don't know, it includes Austrian Airlines, Swiss International. It's a lot of people and a lot of planes. So these are participating in themed collections. You would amass basically cards, like trading cards. And when you get all the cards needed, you get things like free Wi-Fi, access to the airport lounge, airline miles, etc. I think it's interesting on 2 counts. We've seen this happening in larger and larger things. From in the beginning, it was dinner with Gary V with his NFT card. Then it became like Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks and Budweiser. So Lufthansa is bringing this into the full-on enterprise level B2B corporate world. What are your thoughts, Michelle? You're closest to us geographically here to that.
Yes, and we say Lufthansa.
Sorry,
not Lufthansa.
Adidas.
Yeah, they all wear Adidas too.
So a couple of things. First of all, once again, it sticks with our theme that we've had. We're at 44 episodes tonight, and probably from about episode 3, we said that Polygon is looking like it's going to be the loyalty program chain. And that's kind of been pretty consistent, hasn't it, over the last 12 months with regards to that. So there's that point there. So, Polygon, obviously, once they got 2 or 3 of the big players on their chain, other people are probably naturally now migrating towards them and doing deals with going on their blockchain. So that's worked out well for them in that regard. Secondly, one of the interesting things I think about this is it's kind of gamifying it a little bit as well, because what you're going to get are cards based around things like the destinations you go to, or the aircraft that you're flying on, or if you purchase specific holiday packages and stuff like that. So, I think there's going to be an element for people as well about going, oh, well, last time I flew on an A360, this time I want to go on a 777 because then I'll get a different card. So you never know. That I think ultimately people might be looking to complete a set, because you could imagine that some of the things they could come up with would be that if you collect the set of these, then you get this particular bonus. And as you said, Mark, it could be things like going into the lounge, or, an upgrade to business, or, stuff like that. So you could, there are, my mind's going 100 miles an hour about all the permutations that they could have for that. So from that point of view, I think it's quite exciting, and it's a bit newer than just, you get 10 stamps and you get a free coffee at Starbucks. So, I think that they've added a little bit more of a gaming element to this particular program.
Mike, this is pretty close to your world. What do you think of this?
It's very close. I think, you hit the nail on the head with the gamification side of it. But I don't want to, sit here and think on a narrow scope where, they're doing this because they're great guys and they just want people to have fun on their airplanes. They are going to sell sponsorship for all of these various collections. This one is brought to you by X. This one is brought to you by this travel partner. And people who hold those are going to get perks with other things, right? So this is something we've said now for 44 episodes. It is a revenue generating marketing tool, as well as a B2B collaboration tool, right? Yeah. So this is a perfect example of how that could be put in place. Airline miles are one thing that we've always compared NFTs to. The difference is now that you own them, right? So you can sell your airline miles on an open market, which is something you wouldn't necessarily be able to do before. This is an interesting concept with the gamification, because it's almost like you open a pack and you never know where you are. You never know what you're going to get, that kind of feel. And that taps into a human psyche that people are really excited about. And what the hell, if you're flying, you're going to fly anyway. My question, though, in this whole thing, and it always revolves around the same barrier to entry. How do you get people to buy into the system? Okay, we have custodial wallets. We have all these various tools now that have evolved into onboarding people with the simple use of an email. But again, when that technology piece comes with its own digital wallet, all of these programs will be mainstream.
Yep, and you're talking like a PayPal or something like that. That's going to.
I'm talking even deeper. Exactly. Put it right into the device. This new Apple iPhone comes with your very own digital wallet address. You already have one. Guess what? You can import it.
I agree with you. I think that's where it's going to go. But the interesting thing, and this is going to sound like a joke at first, but I'm being serious. Loot boxes raise the issue of manipulation, potentially. And you're going to have that same risk when it comes to your airline miles and perks, because if Mike has been flying a lot and we're giving a lot of perks to him, we can ratchet it down on the algorithm.
When Mike was talking, I thought to myself, did anyone mention loot boxes?
Well, we arm wrestled loot boxes a while ago, but again, let's take it from, a very common theme that we're all aware of. You remember, search under the cap of your Coke bottle for a chance to win. That's a loot box, isn't it? You're going to keep buying Cokes until you get something. That's
randomized. They don't know who buys that. I know when you're
logged in. NFTs are exactly the same way.
When your wallet is plugged in and I control things, it's potentially possible. Now, the way it's structured now in true DeFi, I agree with you. But
I don't know when you're going to execute the transaction. And if we both execute the transaction at the same time, there's a chance that your block enters the blockchain faster than my block. So there is a sense of randomness. Now, again, I'm getting very technical here, but to the random person, they're still, I mean, I remember when the internet came out, there was a game that used to come on, back in the day when there was pop-ups, and you would have to click at various sections of a picture until you actually hit like the secret part of the picture that revealed a code that you win something. When the reality is they just wanted to see how many times my dumbass was going to click the picture.
This is the captcha login.
And it was a lot, wasn't it, Mike?
It was a ton. I spent hours on it. I was going pixel by pixel, clicking on these things. But look, the point is, again, you're tapping into this gamification system. I love it. I think rewards are a huge use case for what NFTs are specifically and blockchain are specifically as well. I want to see them put their money where their mouth is with the onboarding effort. I want them to invest into the education of people, having them download some sort of an app that gets them instant access to a wallet that person controls. And if the minute that happens, again, Lufthansa, however you want to pronounce it, they are going to be a pioneer in the way that these things ultimately move on. Now, Mike, here's an interesting question. What are they calling it?
Trading cards.
Yeah,
That's
the official digital trading cards.
The article discussing it, which again is from Decrypt, quoted them as saying they are NFT trading cards.
So they are using the term NFT.
They are using the term NFT, but they are being careful not to use the term stock or share.
That's fine. Forget about that part of the conversation. My curiosity with this, to follow these reports, are to see how this progresses versus what Starbucks did by calling it something different.
There's in another place in the article, a couple of paragraphs, second paragraph, they're saying letting passengers collect digital trading cards. But I mean, that they've said the second to last paragraph talks about that they've soft tested it with 20,000 users, but what they don't say is that how they've done that. So there's no talk about if it's what kind of wallet. Is it like Reddit where they actually hold the, like they're not actually custodial, so as in self-custody. So it's interesting because they also said that there's 200,000 of them that were issued during the trial period, which is a lot. Like that's a lot of gamification, isn't it? But it's going to be something that, just like I've got an app on my phone at the moment where I store where I've got all of my store cards in it. So I don't actually have to carry a purse anymore that's got 30 store cards in it. I used to have to because there weren't apps before. But now that there's a particular app, I don't need to carry all the cards anymore. I go into the store, I pull it up out of the the app that they're all in, pick the card, scan it, and I'm done. So it's going to be something like that, I would imagine, but in a Web3 environment.
The thing I want to point out, and it was the one word that really jumped out at me, Polygon. We've seen a consistent pattern now where the loyalty rewards programs in the NFT world are consistently showing up with Polygon as the powering blockchain. And I think, Mike, it was you who made the point early on, blockchains will become dedicated to certain things. And
Yes.
Polygon is the rewards loyalty program blockchain.
Yeah.
Why? Ask yourself, why Polygon? Why not Optimism? Why not any other platform? Why Polygon?
That's a question for you. I don't know. I mean, well, they're already using it. That's the one being used.
I mean, there's been competing chains that have evolved due to what Polygon has already proven. But the whole concept of expensive transactions to execute on chain, that's a very much a thing of the past right now.
Yeah.
Right.
So they were one of the earlier, cheaper ones, and that might have attracted the first few.
Well, it required the first few big ones to take that risk, yes. Right? DeGods, we talked about them being one of them. Ultimately, like when some of these bigger ones move over and they bring all of that liquidity and, people bridging to that chain, that adds value to that chain. But the sustainability of that chain is the most important piece here. And what's right behind them? The monster of Ethereum. Right. Yep. So, that is a huge, huge crutch that they can lean on even with the minimal transaction fees. Now, the more traffic that comes there, the more miners are going to be eligible to execute those blocks. Therefore, the blockchain continues to be fast. The minute that it starts to slow down, that's when people migrate somewhere else.
So there's an article in Time magazine. I'm just going to read you the headline here. This is not the point of the story. That Polygon is one of the 100 most influential companies in the world as of 2023. I know they're not technically a company, but they are. Starbucks, Nike, Meta, all these rewards programs are being run on Polygon.
On Polygon, yeah.
So Lufthansa is in a great company. There's going to be more companies to follow, and if it's already a proven model, yeah, Mike, you're right. It is because of Ethereum.
And look, just to kind of close the icing on this cake, like, there are massive use cases that each of those major companies have put forth that are very different from each other, right? What's the underlying component? They are still marketing endeavors. They are still marketing strategies that these companies are executed, which have an underlying positive return on that investment, right? Again, something that flips marketing typically on its head, because typically marketing is a cost to a company. This is actually turning a profit to those types of endeavors, because once you issue them, then it's just a matter of, okay, you got to honor whatever they represent. That's a cost of doing business, right? But the marketing itself, the deployment of that, the execution and the maintenance of that is way cheaper than going out and filming some ridiculous commercial that's going to air in 15 countries.
And Mike, I'm going to build on that and say this has to change the thinking of the companies involved, because this is bigger than just marketing even. Marketing is great and you can drive revenue with these tools, no question. But these are eternal tools. So now you've elevated this from a marketing decision to a business strategy at the firm's topmost level, because it's going to follow the firms, publicly traded or otherwise, forever.
Well, it's putting the loyalty back into loyalty rewards, right? I mean, it's essentially doing what Web3 does and what we preach here all the time. It's building a community.
Yeah.
You've inverted that though, Mike. Putting the loyalty back into loyalty rewards, you're saying it from the perspective of the companies. The companies are viewing it as loyalty of customer, whereas the consumer is viewing it as that firm. I expect something. If I buy an NFT and I'm going to have it forever, let's just say it's a ticket to a game or whatever, I want, that's mine, and I expect you to hold up your end of the bargain. I don't think companies are thinking like that yet. Well,
that's when the term rug comes out from under the rug.
We may be seeing that. All right. I think that's a good note to leave on. Final thoughts, Michelle, Mike, any closing thoughts on this?
No, I think we've said.
I think the one closing item I would highlight, the use cases that we are seeing and we consistently bring forth every week are becoming bigger and bigger companies doing it. We're now at the institutional level.
We're at the country level. We're at the country economic level.
These are not.
And the interesting thing about that is, if you listen to the fear-mongering mainstream media, if you watch your nightly news at 7 o'clock, they will tell you that crypto is dead and it's dying and you need to stay away from it. So that I think is a corresponding point to what you said, Mark.
And we've always drawn the distinction between crypto as a quick money thing and blockchain as an underlying technology to use as a business tool, which I think companies are starting to realize.
Crypto is a tool that can execute some of those blockchain endeavors, right? I mean, there's different pieces of it all. So,
right. Yeah. So I'm going to say that's going to wrap us for the week. This is for those who care. We are not here to pitch anything. This show is intended to be a weekly insight into the digital world of blockchain, how you as a business owner can build with these tools. As Mike says, a revenue generating tool from what used to be a money loser. And so as more and more companies are doing it, we're starting to see different iterations of how you can do it. We're trying to share some cases and give you guys some food for thought. We appreciate the support, the regulars, Caleb and company, everyone who shows up every week. We thank you. We would direct you to the Web3x3 YouTube and LinkedIn pages. And we will be back every week, Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern time. And that's it. That's all I got from here. Anything else?
Nope. Bye. See you, everyone. See you next week.
Thanks, everyone. Peace.
Bye.